Welcome to the Patterson Library Connection. In this episode of our podcast, we'll share good news and library happenings, talk to fun and interesting guests, and connect with our Patterson community. I'm Lillie Muscente, the Director of Marketing and Programs here at the library. In today's episode, I'm talking to Rich Williams, our Patterson Town Supervisor. We'll be talking about Rich's role as a town supervisor, what's happening in town, and what the future looks like, and why Patterson is such a special place to live. Thanks for joining us. Now let's get started. And now I'd like to introduce our special guest, Town of Patterson Supervisor Richard Williams. Thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me here today.
For listeners who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident. I was born in Patterson, been here most of my life, except for a couple of short stints where I moved away for a couple of years here and there. But for the most part, I'm still living in the family home that we've owned for many, many years. I was an arborist, small business owner. For many years, I was very happy, having my head in the sand and not knowing anything about the town and just running my business. And we got into a situation in my neighborhood where there were 3 large buildings and, a number of commercial buildings being proposed and a couple of subdivisions. And the neighborhood kind of rallied, and I ended up on a committee going to the planning board meetings and ended up, finding a new love. I don't know if anybody of your listeners are going to remember Edie Keesby. Edie Keesby brought me into the Environmental Commission way back in 1988, and then one thing led to another. I ended up on the planning board, and 37 years later, here I am. Wow, that's a great way to transition into town government. And Edie was amazing. She was.
She had quite an impact here, as have you. So what led you from the planning board to being supervisor?
Well, I found that, when I was on the planning board, I had a real love for planning and a real love for writing. It was something that was missing in my life. I loved being an arborist. I did a lot of aerial work, and I loved being up in the air doing that. But there was always something missing, and I found it with the planning board. And at the same time, this was back in the mid-1990s, things were changing very quickly. We had New York City imposing new watershed regulations, and there was a big controversy about what, all the local communities were going to do about that and how it was going to, affect them. And then we had the historic 1997 Memorandum of Agreement where we all came together and agreed to do certain things to protect New York City's watershed in exchange for a commitment on the part of the DEP to, assist us in doing all that. But really, the program was a precursor to the MS4 regulations that, I knew were coming out shortly thereafter from the federal government, which, again, were going to impose very stringent stormwater regulations. And I could see clearly moving forward within the town government, there was going to be a need to have a full-time person on staff that was going to deal with not only the New York City DEP regulations and the requirements such as doing a Croton plan, but also to have somebody managing the stormwater regulations coming out from the DEC. And I convinced the town board to create that position, to have a full-time staff person taking care of that within the planning department. When I did, they also asked me to step in and take that position. So 1999, I ended up becoming the full-time town planner for the town of Patterson, dealing with the watershed regulations and such.
As we know, this community has a huge interest in the environment and with the Great Swamp and everything here, so that is a huge concern for a lot of people. So for how many years were you acting as town planner?
I was there for probably about 16, 17 years. During that time, I completely rewrote our town code. I completely rewrote our master plan, which is still in effect today, and in my opinion, still valid, though I have that discussion with a couple of my residents who think we should be updating it. And I don't necessarily disagree. It does require some updates, but I've seen a lot of changes, too, to our community. Some of the commercial development we've been successful in bringing in, but more importantly, what we've done in the hamlet by bringing Town Hall down here. I was very involved with that. Also, the recreation center, building a new recreation center. It was wonderful having the support of the town supervisor, but also working closely with the former town supervisor, Mike Griffin, and also Vinnie Leibel, who was very supportive of a lot of the initiatives we were doing to improve the infrastructure and, the facilities that we have in town.
So how did you go from planning board to being town supervisor? Seems like a natural transition.
So I ended up being a full-time town planner for a number of years, and then it got to the point where the then supervisor, Mike Griffin, decided he had reached the end of his time and he was going to move on. And I really didn't see anybody, sitting in the wings that could fill his shoes, that could take over and keep the momentum going about what we had started many years ago, trying to improve Putnam Lake, improve the hamlet, and maintain the rural quality of our community. At that point, I stepped up and ran for supervisor, and fortunately was successful. It was a pretty contentious election, but I did make it through.
Yeah, town politics often are. So now you've been town supervisor. What does a supervisor do on a daily basis? Like, what is the job day to day?
Well, certainly, of course, I'm the chief financial officer for the town, and I'm responsible for all the funds that come in and all the funds going out, doing payroll. Also, I am the chair of the legislative body, the town board, working with my fellow town board members to adopt policies and procedures and overall govern the town. I'm also responsible for the day-to-day operation of all the departments, making sure everybody comes in and does their job and serves our residents well.
No easy feat there. So how have you seen, you've been in politics a long time in town, how has Patterson changed over the years?
Well, when I grew up in this community, it was cowtown. It was pretty much dairy farms. We had Mendel's Farm on 22. We had Henry Burdick over off of Bullet Hole. Mount Ebo Farm, where, the Mount Ebo Corporate Park is now. There were dairy farms everywhere growing up. They've all fallen by the wayside at this point. And, I've seen Route 22 expanded. I've seen commercial development on Route 22, Robin Hill Corporate Park. And again, one of the reasons I got into this is because, there was a lot of development going on in the mid to late 80s. And I was concerned about the rural quality of our town and losing that. I certainly didn't want to do that, see that loss, the rural quality. So while I'm still advocating for maintaining our rural quality, and I think we've done a fairly good job of doing that, we've changed the zoning to, we have a mandatory cluster provision, something you won't find anywhere else in New York, to keep open space and keep tracts of land so we maintain those wildlife corridors, but also been as proactive as we can be about bringing in new commercial projects which are going to benefit our community.
Well, we've seen a lot of changes, and I know that there's a lot more to come. What are some of the top priorities for Patterson right now?
Well, I certainly want to see a little bit more commercial growth to help offset the taxes. It would be nice if we could have a state government which helped us, but also a state government which didn't constantly come down and impose additional tax burdens on my residents that we have very little choice about passing on. I had one of the highest tax increases this year that I've had since I took office, which was just a little over 3%, but it was all driven by the utility costs, which are being driven by state policy, the MS4 program, which has been ratcheted up significantly about the requirements that town has to do, and other state mandates that we have to live under.
And that's the stuff that a lot of people don't know. I know we get our tax bills in the mail and we take a look and everybody has a reaction to it. And there is a lot behind the scenes that are the reasons why they increase like that. So it's good to hear some of the reasons why. So what do you think makes Patterson such a special place to live? We pay the taxes, we have beautiful green space, but there's something special about this community. What do you think that is?
Well, I think it's the rural character of our community. We've still maintained quite a bit of open space. Most of the Haviland Hollow corridor is now protected open space by the New York State DEC, which is a tremendous asset for the town. We have the bike trail going through. We have, the remnants of the Great Swamp, and I say remnants because the beaver activity have really damaged that swamp, and that's something that someday we're going to have to figure out what to do with. But I think the rural character and keeping it rural and keeping it, a friendly place for people to raise their families.
It's interesting. I remember when I was in college, I worked for the Putnam County News and Recorder, and I covered all the legislator meetings. And I believe it was Ray McGuire, who was the legislator for Patterson at the time, and I found it so interesting that even then there was such an interest in the entire legislature to have growth while maintaining the green space, because I know we moved up from the Bronx and we came to the country, as everyone said, you moved upstate, but we loved it, and it really it is something so important to preserve even today. So it's always nice to see that all these years later, you have to find that balance between growth and maintaining that green space and creating that environment that's so special. So from your perspective as a town supervisor, why do you think we as a library are such an important community asset?
Well, certainly the programs that are offered by the library. When I was growing up, a library was a place to go look at dusty old books. That's not the case anymore. So the library has kind of transitioned into offering programs and services that the community needs that, aren't provided in any other way. I mentioned when I first got here the passes that you can pick up from the library to go to some of the museums and, places like Mystic, Connecticut. I admitted fully when I came in, I'm not a big user of the library, but I use that a lot. Yeah. And that is a great program in and of itself. But, the library here, they offer all sorts of educational programs and music programs. And I do have one complaint, though, about the library. It seems like every good historical discussion you have is on a town board meeting night.
So. Well, we tried to move it because I know Ron Taylor has to be here, so we have moved around. But we'll take that under consideration and find a new night, because we would like to see everybody have the opportunity to come. But it's true, we do have a lot of conflicts with the town meetings. I know that we've worked around the schedule a little bit with that, but the town history is really important. As Ron was our guest last month on the podcast, and it was really interesting. And I know I've worked with him for 20 years almost. I'm here almost 20 years, and we've worked so closely together, and I've learned so much. I grew up in the town of Kent, and first the Bronx and then Kent, and now Pauling. But having worked in Patterson for 20 years, it has been really interesting to learn how much about the history has impacted even my life. Like I said, we moved up from the Bronx, and we loved how green it was and how beautiful, but I didn't really understand the agricultural history here. But I used to ski at Birch Hill or come this way to go to Dills, I believe it was at the time. And so there's been a lot of changes over the years, but it's always been a really cool place. And I always, we went to Carmel schools where all the kids come from every town, so we always had friends from every town and friends from Patterson, and I would visit, some of them that lived over off of Cushman Road, and it's just been a really great place to grow up. But I do think the library fills some of the voids that we have. Like we try to have artwork on the walls and bring the concerts, like you said, and it is a place where people come together, and it's a great place. Like I love that we have the back property where we can host a concert, and it's along the Great Swamp, and it's just pretty. It's just a really nice place to be.
And it's been wonderful that the library, kind of participates in the events that are going on in the community right here in the hamlet with the fire department, with the rec center, and such. And we've been able to, with the library and the town and the Pattersons, really come up with some great community events.
The partnerships are invaluable to us. I have to say, without the partnerships of the different organizations and local businesses, we wouldn't be able to do half of what we do. They are so supportive, and everything that we do, I try to form a partnership with somebody that we can work with, because we all benefit, then we all grow and we all thrive. And I think with the Rotary Touch a Truck event has been a big one for us, and our great give back events, and the Pattersons helping us with the garden, and all of that wouldn't be possible without being able to do that. So it's a huge asset to us being able to work with everybody. So you come to almost every event we have, so we really appreciate
I love
your
them.
presence. Yeah, you're
Absolutely
always
love
here to support, and we really appreciate that. Having a central location in town is really important. So we get a lot of people that just drive by, stop in, and when they see something going on, they're like, wow, what was that? We saw so many cars. So it's really nice when we do these collaborative events, because I do think working with the rec department, Matt's wonderful, and we've, done things with him, and it just is a really nice partnership that I think benefits all of us. So, and the community as a whole. What are some of the challenges towns like Patterson are facing today?
Well, certainly number one challenge for all municipalities, has to do with taxes and trying to keep the taxes as low as we can to keep our residents in our communities. We've seen quite the out-migration in New York in recent years, and it's been very unfortunate because we lose some of the older people who remember the community as it used to be, and the people that were firemen and were participated in many of our activities. That certainly is our biggest challenge, is the taxes. Living in New York State, trying to get things done in the community and the regulatory hurdles that are thrown at the town. Most people think that all the regulatory hurdles that you're going to have to go through, are the businesses and the individuals who may want to put an addition on your house. The town has so many more that we have to go through. For example, DEC has a general permit that allows us to go in and do some small modifications to a lake. If we've drawn the lake down, we were going to do that. We applied for the regulations. It's supposed to be a 10-day cycle. 30 days later, they tell me they want me to go do a full lake sampling program before they're going to let me take out some rocks. It's the regulatory hurdles that we have in New York State are just sometimes unbearable.
Does make everything harder for sure. So what have you done as the town planner and as supervisor that you are most proud of?
That's a question I really can't answer because we've done so much. I mean, I touched on it before. Moving the rec center down here and moving town hall down in the hamlet to try to revitalize the hamlet, bringing sewer and putting sidewalks into the hamlet. I'm very excited right now because we've just turned the water on. So now we have water and sewer on Front Street. And as a result, the planning board now has an application for 2 brand new buildings on Front Street.
Awesome.
That are going to really start turning Front Street around.
That's great.
It's commercial it's residential over commercial, 2 floors of apartments. You need the people to support the businesses. We've got the train station right there, so it's a good match. And some of the other things that we've done, making improvements to make the Route 311. Most people don't realize this, but the traffic lights that are going in down on 311 Estate Road are being paid for by the town. It's a town project.
Oh, wow.
Again, I had to go to the DOT, get all the permits to put lights in down there. I was fortunate to get funding through the state to do it. But the traffic lights to make that intersection safer are a town project, and we're hoping to see those lights turned on the beginning of February.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that either.
Yeah. So we've been doing quite a bit. We've got the EMS building going up. Patterson was the first town in Putnam County to start our own municipal EMS service. We did so because we evaluated what the costs were going to be to, keep it privatized or take it over ourselves. And I'm very happy to say that, we are very close to breaking even on it. It's never going to be a moneymaker. Government shouldn't run as a moneymaker, but, our EMS service is doing phenomenal. And, we now have 3 ambulances. We've got another one coming on the way. We're starting to shift to having 2 crews running periodically. because there's that much of a demand.
Yeah.
So
That's great news. What a great list. I love that Front Street is going to have, some development there. As you know, we did our community conversations a couple of years ago, and I know we shared the results. And that was the key thing that everybody asked for was restaurants and shops on Front Street. They want that hamlet. So I think people are going to be thrilled to hear that.
yes,
That's terrific.
I'm hoping so. It's been a long time that we've been working on this. We first started in this in 1990 when we brought Regional Plan Association in, and they gave us a punch list of things to do, and we've been working on them ever since. And I think we're finally at the end of the road here where it's got to work.
Well, it's great to hear that we're moving in that direction. That's terrific. I think that's really exciting. And like I said, a lot of people asked for that, and I think they'll be thrilled to hear about this. So this is awesome. So how can people stay informed and get involved in town government if they want to?
The meetings are published. The dates are published. They can attend meetings. COVID restructured a lot of what we all do now. We had to find new ways to, keep people involved. So we are, with COVID, we ended up putting our meetings on Zoom and YouTube. They are still doing that. Years later. We don't intend to change that practice. So even if you can't get out of your home, you can always tune in by Zoom. And we do take comments by Zoom if anybody wants to comment. And if, you still can't make it at the time we're having the meeting, they are up on YouTube. You can view them anytime you want.
And that's great because people often can't make it to the meetings, but it's nice they have access to it. So when you're not working as a supervisor, what do you like to do on your free time?
I don't know. I would really like to find out someday.
When you get some free time.
Oh, yeah. No, my day usually starts between 7 and 8 o'clock every morning and, sometimes goes till 9 o'clock at night. And, it's a job that I love. I've been doing it for a long time, but I do put in quite a few hours. When I'm not there, I'm usually at home because I have to mow the lawn or, take care of something. Barring that, I don't get to do a whole lot.
Is there anything you'd like our listeners to know about Patterson or the town government that we haven't covered yet?
We are looking to work with Congressman Matt Slater to get funding to pave a portion of 311 this year. Hopefully that's going to be done. Then we've got to push on and get Route 164 paved. We are, in the future, we're still going down the road of trying to find a way to make Putnam Lake a better place to live. We just completely redid Club Court Park, so there's a new park over there. All new equipment has been placed in the park. Hopefully we're going to get the EMS building finished.
Yeah.
I'll be excited to see that done. So that was one of my 3 big projects for the year. 2 of them are done, pretty close to being done. Just have to finish that one up.
Well, it sounds like 2026 is off to a great start. So
it is.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We really learned a lot. This was a great conversation with you, and I hope our listeners enjoy learning more about the town and you and getting excited about what's to come in Patterson.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And, my door is always open. Anybody that, is listening, if they want to call me or stop in and say hi, door is always open.
Thank you for tuning in to the Patterson Library Connection. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us grow, please share it with a friend. You can follow and subscribe to our podcast on our website, pattersonlibrary.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. This podcast was recorded at the Patterson Library in Patterson, New York. Special thanks to our sound engineer, producer, and composer, Adam Bernier, our library director, Stephanie Harrison, and our board of trustees, and to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Lillie Muscente. We'll see you next time on the Patterson Library Connection. The Patterson Library trustees and staff do not promote nor endorse the opinions of our guests.